Imagine a world with no enemies, no hunger, no winter. A place where nothing can ever hurt you again. 8 lucky residents moved in. 5 years on, not one of them was still breathing. And no doctor could say why. You probably think you already know the answer. Life got too easy, they got soft, comfort made them weak. That is the story everyone tells. It is also wrong. There was always plenty to eat, there was always plenty to drink. Yet something else ran dry, something nobody had ever thought to measure. And the same thing may be running out around you right now. Let me take you inside the experiment that proved it. The year is 1968. An American scientist sets out to build a perfect paradise. Not for people, for mice. He tucked fluffy bedding into every corner they could reach. He held the temperature steady, warm and constant, day and night. The cages were cleaned by hand on a strict schedule. The residents were the healthiest mice he could find. No predators, no disease, no cold, no threat of any kind. He called it a universe. This was Universe 25. Why 25? Because there had been 24 before it. This scientist had spent 20 years chasing one question. What becomes of a society once life stops being difficult? He had built paradise after paradise, in a forest, in barns, in labs. 24 worlds, each one a little more perfect than the last. And in every single one, the exact same thing happened. First the population would explode, then violence would spike, then mating twisted into something frantic and broken. Then everything went quiet and the colony simply died. 24 times he watched it, 24 times it ended the same. Number 25 was supposed to be the flawless run. A spotless trial, the one result no one could dispute. So he built it bigger and better than ever. A square pen 9 feet on every side. Walls stacked with little apartments, floor to ceiling. Mesh tunnels ran between them like staircases. He nicknamed them the walk-up apartments. Food hoppers that never ran empty. Drinking bottles that were always kept topped up. He did the math, the space could hold nearly 4,000 mice. It would never come anywhere close. On day 1, he placed the 8 founders inside and closed the lid. 4 males, 4 females, the beginning of everything. For the first 100 days, almost nothing happened. The mice explored, they learned the layout, they picked their corners. Then the first babies were born, and their numbers started doubling roughly every 2 months. Twice as many mice, then twice again, then again. By day 315, 600 mice lived inside. They scrambled across one another along the ramps. They slept in heaps, they fought for the best nests up top. This is the exact moment it all began to break. In a normal colony, when it gets too crowded, the extra mice leave. They go find new ground, new territory, a fresh start. But inside Universe 25, there was nowhere to go. Every role was already taken, every corner already claimed. And so the young mice with no place to belong began to drift. The males with no purpose pooled in the center of the pen. They formed quiet pools of bodies that did nothing at all. He would lean over the pen for hours as they simply sat there. They had no fight to win, no mate to court, nothing to defend. They were strong, well-fed, and utterly without purpose. When one was attacked, he would not even fight back. He would lie there, take the blows, then walk a few steps and lie down again. But not all of them went silent. A second group went the opposite way, frantic, wild. They moved faster than any other mouse in the pen. They shoved their way into nests other males were guarding. They ignored every ritual the others still followed. Even violence could not stop them. In the worst corners, behaviors appeared that no mouse society had ever shown. The females had their own kind of retreat. Those with no place left scaled up to the topmost rooms. And up there alone they stopped. They stopped meeting males, they stopped having young. Then the scientist noticed something stranger still. Food was everywhere, equally available in every part of the pen. But the mice would not eat alone. They crowded together at just a few specific feeders. The company of other mice had wired itself into hunger. A full feeder, if it stood alone, was useless to them. He called it the behavioral sink. And then the mothers began to fail, in the darkest way of all. Guarding a nest in that chaos took constant work. The fathers who once held territory grew worn out and gave up. So a mother had to guard her nest by herself, even while feeding. Under the strain, they began turning on their own babies. They scattered them, abandoned them in random corners. Some forgot which pups were even theirs. In the worst sections, fewer than 1 in 20 newborns survived. The scientist wrote that the colony's social fabric was already dead. Their bodies kept living. What bound them as a society did not. The rare survivors grew up beside mothers who hardly saw them. They grew up with no idea what a normal mouse life even looked like. And when they came of age, they were like nothing he had seen. These males never fought. They never tried to mate. They never joined in any part of the colony at all. All they did was eat, sleep, and groom themselves. Their coat stayed spotless since they never once scuffled. He gave them a name. He called them the beautiful ones. On the surface, they seemed the fittest creatures in the entire pen. On the inside, they were already gone. They could not socialize. They could not mate. They simply opted out. Their minds had grown up in a world where every role was already filled. So they quietly stepped out of the species entirely. On day 560, the population hit its peak. 2,200 mice. It would never grow again. The last new mouse was ever conceived on day 920. After that, not one more was ever born. The colony just kept aging. The beautiful ones kept grooming. The lonely females stayed up high. Pointless violence flickered on in the corners. And one by one, with no young coming up behind them, the mice died. On May 23, 1973, the last mouse died. 4 years and 10 months after the lid first closed. He later described it as the mice dying twice over. The earlier one was the death of the will to live. The later one was the body finally giving out. And the first arrived long before the second ever did. Once his findings spread, people seized the simplest takeaway. Comfort kills, they said, abundance kills. An easy life destroys itself. Those flawless, hollow mice became a defining cautionary symbol of the era. City planners pointed to it, preachers pointed to it, politicians of every stripe pointed to it. Anyone afraid of modern life found their proof in those mice. But here is the thing, that was not what the scientist actually said. His real conclusion was right there, in his own words, in the paper. For a creature as complex as a human, he wrote, the same collapse was not just possible. It was logical. When the number of individuals far exceeds the meaningful roles available, only disruption and breakdown can follow. The killer was never comfort. What killed them was the vanishing of roles worth filling. The fighters had no one left to fight. Mothers stood watch over nests no one would help them hold. The young inherited nothing they were ever meant to inherit. The structure that gave each mouse a reason to take part simply evaporated. There was food to spare, there was water to spare. What ran dry was a thing nobody had ever planned to include. Comfort did not kill them. It only stripped away the resistance that made living feel real. And this is the piece that almost no one repeats. The scientist was not a man of despair. He gave his remaining years not to forecasting the ruin, but trying to prevent it. He kept building new worlds. He kept changing the variables. He was searching for the one thing he could add back into paradise, the single ingredient that would keep it running. And he believed deeply that it could be done. He was convinced people could pick a different path than the mice. As physical space shrinks, he wrote, we move into a different kind of space. Into thought, into connection, into the labor of creating fresh purpose. Roles that never existed before. He gave it a long name, ideational generativity. But it means something simple. Never stop inventing fresh reasons to exist. So when the days feel too smooth, too easy, too empty, the answer is not to wish for hardship. It is to find something only you can hold a place for. A person who needs you, a craft, a corner of the world to tend. The mice never had a choice. They could not invent a new reason. But you can. The friction you sometimes resent is the same friction that makes you feel alive. Paradise was never the goal. A reason to get up tomorrow always was. What happens next is not written in the data. It is still quietly up to you.